Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone joining us, depending on what part of the world you're joining from. You're welcome to the REA Power Chat. A special edition of the REA Power Chat. In the last 16 days, the world has, collaborated and lent their voices to, this 16 days of activism campaign against gender-based violence. And the REA has been a very key part of this campaign in the last 16 days. Well, to close, today being the last day, we decided to do a special edition, and bring very valuable panelists like yourselves to share perspectives on GBV, especially in the area of prevention. Redress is good, but I think as REA, especially under the Nigeria Electrification project, we pay a lot of attention to prevention. It's better if it doesn't happen than redressing when it does. Thank you so much for joining us. This will be a moderated session. We have some easy and tough questions for all the panelists, and then we'll do a 15 minutes Q&A just to allow the attendees also chime in, ask questions or lend their voices to the conversation. Today I'll be moderating with Susan Igata, the Senior Social Specialist for the Nigeria Electrification project. We'll be co-moderating this, and we look forward to having an amazing session. During the 15 minutes Q&A, we'll let in some attendees with questions. So if you're an attendee and you're listening right now from whatever part of the world you're joining in, before the Q&A kicks off, you can raise your hand using the icon, or better still, you can use the comment box to ask your questions or share your perspectives. I will be able to provide responses to some of those questions. And of course, if any of the panelists are not actually busy sharing valuable thoughts, taking the floor to share their perspectives, and they come across your questions or your feedback, they will spare a second or two to actually provide responses to those questions. So those question boxes are actually very valuable to this session. We're happy to have you all once again. I'll be handing over to Susan Igata to get us through this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I say a very good morning to all of you. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining us from once again. Thank you so much, esteemed panelists, for taking the time to join this session. Even though it was short notice, we're really appreciative of your time and the effort you put in the sector. As David has said, this is just the last mile for the campaign against gender-based violence against women and girls. I would say in the space, really, in the energy sector, we have talked a lot about gender-based violence, gender equity, gender inclusion, and stuff like that. But we're still struggling with having a policy in place, right, where everything can come together and then we can all be on the same page, talking the same talk and working the same work. So we have a lot of us working in silos, but when do we bring all this together? So that's the reason why we're having this, part of the reason we're having this conversation, just to hear from, different sides. So there is the agency side with government, the REA, and then there is yourself, Oga Ayo, you're the REAN president, and just by virtue of that alone, we feel like you have a lot of insight and a lot of experience, working with different developers and having access to their various grievances, what has been happening on their project sites. And then we have Solar Sisters. You are doing an amazing job in communities with women, And so it'd be very nice to get your insight, into what women are really going through in the communities. Have you had cases? Have you heard of sexual harassment? Have you heard of exploitation, incidences? Have you heard of violence against these women just because of their economic achievements or the improvement in their economic?
Susan, are you there? Seem to have lost you.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Okay, Susan, I think you're back. Do you want me to take this from here, or you want to join back here? Okay, so I think I would like to start with Damilola. I would like to put I on the spot, but through Damilola of Ashdam. I mean, as one of the female-led energy access companies within this ecosystem, do you believe male allies in the energy sector can play a role in actively contributing to preventing GBV and promoting gender equality across the value chains?
Hi, good morning,
So
everyone.
I'm putting us, the men, on the spot now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yes, totally. Okay, Susan, do you want to go ahead?
Just having a bit of a challenge with our network, but
Yeah.
David has gone on already. So Damilola, thank you. You have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Susan, and thank you, David. So, of course, I totally believe that men have a very, very big role to play in preventing gender-based violence in the industry, because most of the times, those that actually does this act are men. But yes, there are times that even women, like they are also involved in these activities. They could be observers, because when we talk about gender-based violence, you could be the observer, you could also be the offender. So even if you are an observer while this act is going on, then you are also part of it, because if you're an observer and you are not doing anything about it, then you're also part of it. And so men are like, sorry men, but I'm putting the shades on you. Yes, you are most times those that actually does this act in different ways, like different forms of ways that these acts are being done. I don't know, maybe you want me to go in depth, or maybe there's still going to be some questions as regards to examples of some of these violent acts. Should I go more in depth? I don't know if there's going to be a question on
Yes.
it.
So from what I can sense, Damilola, what you're saying is that it's either men are, passively, they are passive onlookers of this, or actively.
Yes.
I think you should give
Men
a
are
little bit
both passive
examples
and
of
active.
both ends.
Hello, sorry, what did
Can you
you
give
say? I
us?
didn't hear you.
Yes, can you give us examples on both ends of the divide, both a passive onlooker as well as an active participant?
Okay, so
Thank you.
I'll give examples of actively being part of these JBVs. Let's say there are instances. Okay, let me give you just one that happened just 2 days ago in my organization. So my organization was part of this trade fair, and we were outside and promoting renewable energy products and also selling renewable energy products. And some of the clients that actually came to our stand to buy products, they were like, oh, I'm going to buy this product only if you give me this particular female as part of this clean energy solution. You understand? So, and we have so many people around us, both men and women, and some of the men were just laughing. You understand? They were just laughing. I was like, oh, because it's an harassment for someone to be saying, oh, because I want to buy a clean energy solution, this particular lady must be brought along. or this particular lady must follow me to my house to go and install this solution. That is the only reason why I'm going to go for this clean energy solution. So I had to step in, and I had to, because if we don't step in and we don't talk, both men or female, both male or male, then we are also part of the act. We are also like observers, but we are just passive, and we are just laughing, but we shouldn't. So we had to like tell the client and that no, we are only selling clean products, and our people are not part of the product, and there is no way we are going to be giving you this lady because you are buying a clean energy solution. Is it that you buy and you go, or you don't buy? We are not selling ourselves because of clean energy solutions, and this happens a lot. It happens every single time. So if a man is there and is just silent and is just laughing, like let's say a particular member of Ashton also is a man and is just laughing along with the men that were requesting for his colleague to be taken along with the products, then is a passive observer, and it shouldn't be. We should speak up for ourselves. So when we are going out there and we are going out with female members, the men on our team should also know that they are there to protect, to support, to do things right when it comes to sexual harassment, gender-based violence, which could be in terms of even touching. There are sometimes that men will come and they'll be touching the female. So we should be able to stand for ourselves as female, and then the men in the industry should also be able to stand and speak out. There should be he for she. They should be able to speak out on behalf of the female also, while the female should also be able to stand for themselves. They shouldn't depend on the men to speak out for them. But yes, the men should also actively be able to protect the women, be able to speak on their behalf, and they also should have kind of orientation that they will know that yes, GBV can be in different ways, being a bully, being speaking, acting. It could be even passive or active. It could even be a look, and we should not stand for it. We should speak out immediately.
Yeah, thanks so much, Damilola. I totally agree with you that this is not a play thing. It's something that should always be actively prevented. And I mean, that's why I think we should seek legal counsel on this by bringing in Barrister Amina. Madam, please, I know the REA is one of the most socially responsible institutions in Nigeria, but I would like you to share, I mean, the sort of legal mechanisms or reporting structures that exist within the REA to support survivors of GBV. But I wouldn't want you to restrict it to the REA. I mean, because I believe that we can get very valuable perspectives from you, you know, as a barrister with age-long experience. Speak generally on your thoughts on this, but now narrow it down to the mechanisms that exist within the REA. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here. As it was said earlier on, today marks the end of the 16 days activism on gender-based violence, which also coincides with the Human Rights Day. So congratulations to all of us on today. Now, regarding, okay. So regarding the gender-based violence, as it affects, I would want to start with my home front, I mean the REA, where I belong. REA has been there in the last like 3, 4, 5 years or thereabout, no, since 2019 or thereabout. REA has been looking towards gender issues. There has been gender-based violence policy documents that was worked on and approved, which is called the Gender Mainstream Document. It's a policy document that became active since 2019. And just to address issues relating to gender-based violence and things like that. The management thereafter appointed a technical advisor on gender mainstreaming and a woman leader in the agency in a way, in a bid to bridge the gap between the management and victims. So if there is a complaint in any form, we're glad we even have an MD that has operates an open door policy. So his doors are always open 24/7, more or less. And then if there are cases of anything like that, staff have been advised and are aware that they can walk towards the MD's office and talk to him one-on-one because of the policy he operates. They could also discuss with any of the top management staff for onward transmission to the MD who has a listening ears. We can also talk to the woman leader of the agency who would in turn now discuss with the MD on the issues before it gets beyond that. Sorry. And then under the NEP, so under the NEP project, we also have, NEP project is the Nigerian Electrification Project, which is a project under the Rural Electrification Agency. We have a social specialist on gender matters that was appointed, and she's sitting there with us. She's Susan. So things that affect gender issues in NEP under the REA, people can relate it to her and discuss with her. The REA on its own also had what we call STEM, which STEM, which means science, technology, engineering, and maths. It's a program where female students in the universities, higher institutions, I think about 20 or 30 institutions, were beneficiaries to study under the EEP project, that's the Energizing Education Project program through the contractors. So these are part of the things REA has done so far. Also under the NEP, there's what is called a code of conduct document, which is supposed to be signed by the NEP employees and the service providers or contractors. This is in a bid to guard sexual exploitations, harassment, any form of abuse. The REA also through NEP has organized lots of capacity building programs, trainings across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, so as to create awareness to prevent and respond to GBV. It's also been done in collaboration with NGOs, various NGOs. REA as an organization believes more on prevention than responding or curative aspect of it, in the sense that we try as much as possible to prevent it than having stories to tell where we'll have to explain and it goes beyond board. So we work more on prevention than curative measures. And that is why so far we have not really had any case on ground that has come or has been reported officially on issues that affects GBV, whether it is male or female. That's about it for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Barrister. That was very, very helpful. I think we should quickly go to the Solar Sisters, one of my favorite brand names within the energy ecosystem. Solar Sisters.
Yeah.
So I would like to get your thoughts, on this. I mean, you guys have sustained support for local women in Africa over the years, facilitating the creation of clean energy businesses as well. But
Yeah.
what has been your experience generally, when it comes to social and cultural dynamics in last mile communities, vis-a-vis the safety of women? I mean, you have been to the field more than 1 million times, I'm sure. I would like you to share your thoughts, on your experience so far. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for your question. Gender-based issues are issues that are very dear to my heart, and at the very center and the crux of what Solar Sister represents. Gender-based violence is a global issue that affects women and girls, disproportionately, but it can also affect men, boys, and gender diverse individuals. Because sometimes when we say gender, what comes to mind first is women, but gender is really just gender. It can be men, it can be, but we acknowledge and appreciate the fact that women and girls are not affected as equally as men and boys. And combating gender-based violence requires, addressing root cause issues, on cultural norms, on inequality. So our model is focused on empowering women entrepreneurs to build clean energy businesses, improving livelihood for themselves, for their families, and for their communities. Now, there are numerous pathways that our model has contribute to addressing gender-based violence in last mile communities. And some of the pathways I'll just be sharing about. One is economic empowerment that reduces dependency. Now, one of the root causes we have found in our work where women as part of household managers or contributors experience gender-based violence is owing to excessive dependency, financial dependency on their male spouses. And this has, led to several household domestic environments and violence. So when women are empowered economically, it increases financial independence because women are now equipped with entrepreneurial skills and opportunities. They are engaged in income generating activity. So our work reduces dependency on potentially abusive partners or family members. It increases the decision-making power of women because financially empowered women can gain greater confidence and gain influence on households and on community decisions. I mean, we have our women entrepreneurs through their several stories who say they are now referred to as Mama Solar, who didn't used to have a voice in their house or who didn't used to have a voice in their community. And now, because they are engaged in this clean energy business, they now have a voice. They can now contribute financially to their homes. And so it comes with respect, it comes with regard, it comes with accepting their opinion, taking their decision, considering them, including them as part of the decision at the household level or even at the community level. Another pathway is, community-based advocacy and awareness. So our women entrepreneurs, because of the work they do, they bring light. And because of that, they often become role models in their community to girl children, to boy children, raising awareness about rights, about gender equality, because now their girl children can see them engage in an income generating activity, become women of power, women that have a voice, and they know that they have a brighter future. Another pathway Solar Sisters work minimizes cases of gender-based violence is that the work our entrepreneurs do, they go from household to household, community to community, distributing solar lamps, selling their solar lamps and clean cook stoves. As they do this, they are engaging with communities, enhancing their mobility, enhancing their social connections. They are finding out the way of life of other communities. They are realizing that they are not just in their bubble where there's a social misnorm and they have accepted it. They are realizing that there's a better life out there and that they can adopt and bring to their community and educate people to learn. So you see, increased social connections exposes community members, because when people stay in their bubble, they think that everything they are doing is perfect, handed down from their forefathers. But when people can interact, which is one of the important valid advantages of what our women entrepreneurs stand to gain, are the social connections that they create and they build as they go around to sell their clean energy products. We also ensure that there's community transformation, because key to what we do is that we engage different community members at different stakeholders at different levels. And in doing that, we challenge their gender norms. We visit communities where the men are, aversive and they are resistant and they are saying, no, their women cannot engage in any business. But by the time we educate them, by the time we sensitize them and raise their awareness, they buy into it. They allow their women to do the business. They see the gains. We even have women entrepreneurs who their husbands eventually join them in the clean energy business. So all of these things that our women entrepreneurs do, all of the things that Solar Sister does, challenges gender norms. And because these gender norms have been challenged, it has a ripple effect on families and on communities, because economic stability that women bring to their families reduces tensions, creates a more supportive environment, fosters respect and cooperation. So our work in the last mile community is holistic. It does not only empower women, but it contributes to creating a safer and more equitable community.
Thank you so much, Chioma. And yes, I totally agree that, economic empowerment.
So I think we lost David there. Thank you so much, Chioma, for your thoughts. Is he coming back? Not yet. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that, Chioma. So I don't know if Mr. Ayo is still on the call with us, because I don't
Proud to even inclusion, and find out that
David, we lost you for a bit, actually.
for a bit, yeah, I think it's the network. Can you hear me now? Is Mr.
Yes,
Ayo on? Ayo, can you still hear us? Earlier he mentioned that he was in transit. I want to believe that he's unable. We'll reserve his questions for he must answer those questions. So I think, Susan, over to you. Do you have any questions for our panelists? Let's take another round.
Yes, thank you so much, David, for that very meaningful conversation. I always have questions around gender-based violence, quite honestly, because we're talking about survivor-centered approach. We're talking about what reactionary measures we're putting in place. But one thing that really bugs me is policy direction, right? So do we have a policy? Quite honestly, do we have a policy that is guiding our thoughts around how to solve gender-based violence? Now, when we hear gender-based violence, a lot of us will be thinking about domestic violence, but we really want to narrow this down to the energy sector, right? So in the space, what we're doing, how do we put measures in place to ensure that the regular, for example, what Mrs. Damilola spoke about, somebody just assuming it's normal. Quite honestly, it's a norm. It's not even a joke. The man must have said that, but he didn't say, as far as he's concerned, it wasn't coming from a bad place, right? But how do we now identify this subtle sexual harassment, right? A lot of times, even girls themselves do not know that that is sexual harassment, because it has become something that the society is used to. People just do these things and then we say, oh, just laugh it off. Oh, just permit me to say, now talk it talk. Do you understand? It's not as if he actually perpetrated it, but it's a form of sexual violence. It's a form of sexual harassment. You don't necessarily have to hit the girl on the back or on the bum or tap her anywhere else for it to be harassment. You don't know what you're doing to the mind of that particular child at that time, right? So we need to start thinking along those, in that direction. What are we doing to ensure that there is enough awareness out there, both to the community women and the community men as well, for them to understand that when a man comes into your community, or when you have energy projects in your community, and these guys are coming into the community with very fat pockets, right? Is it safe for you to send your 10-year-old to go and run errands for them? Did you get what I mean? So what are we putting in place to ensure that these people we're sending into communities actually understand the implication of doing things like that within the community, or even getting, I really don't want to hear that a girl is pregnant for any worker, but yeah, it happens sometimes, right? And these girls are even afraid to come out and speak about it. And the reason they're not coming out to speak about it is because there is the stigma, attached to things like that. So what are we doing as a people, as an agency, as a developer, as an association? What are we doing to create that awareness amongst our staff members even before they go into these communities? What are we doing in terms of documentation? What are we signing? What are we doing really? That question is just something we need to answer. What are we doing as a people? So I'll just like to start off with Ashdam, Mrs. Damilola. So I just want to ask a question. Now, what policy direction are you working towards in your company, in your organization? I know you're a member of a lot of NGOs dealing with girls. I don't know if you're dealing with boys, but I feel like we should also catch them young as boys because we're catching them young as girls. So what are we doing? What policy direction are you following? Thank you.
Damilola, can you unmute yourself?
You're muted.
Apologies there. Okay, so as Susan said, I'm a member of several organizations. I have an NGO that I founded that is called Girls and Women Technological Empowerment Organization, where we empower young girls and also adults, females in technical roles, so have technical expertise and be able to work in technical roles. But of course, that is just one aspect of me. I'm also the co-founder of Ashtam Solar, and in Ashtam Solar, we do trainings for both men and women. And though we have a soft spot for women because we want gender inclusivity in the renewable energy sector, but as Shoma have said, when we say gender, it's not only about female, it's about men and women. And I'm also the vice president of REAN. My president is right here, Mr. Ayo Ademilua. So I get involved with both men and women, but I have a very, very soft spot for women and girls because we must have gender parity in the technical space, and we must have it especially in renewable energy technical space. So what we do in my organizations, we have a policy right now that that is a gender inclusive policy, and but for sexual harassment or gender-based violence, to be specific, what we do, we have a training that is called creating a workplace, creating a safe workplace. And that training has to do a lot with sexual harassment and discrimination. And when we talk about sexual harassment and discrimination, as we've all known and as we've said on this call, it is not only about female. Even a man can be discriminated, can be sexually harassed by female. So on that training, what we do, we are able to let our participants understand the kind of discriminations, both the passive and the active one, and how it can be tackled, how gender discrimination can be safely reported, and when it is reported, how it can be handled so that it's not, because when some of these things, people are afraid to speak out because it's not that they don't believe that it is safe for them to stop. So there are mechanisms that could be put in place for safe reporting of these acts. There are mechanisms that could be put in place for safe reporting of this act, a very, very safe and enabling environment so that both men and female can speak out without the fear of, oh, if I speak out, I can be demoted, I can be sacked, I can be sent on unpaid leave. So there are different ways that this could be done. And it's very, very important that we have that safe environment to speak out. And it's very, very important that organizations have these mechanisms in place. And it's also very, very important that people in the energy sector, players in the energy sector, both on-field players and even in-office players, they also understand how to be able to use these mechanisms to report and to act on the mechanisms very well, to act on to make sure that environment is safe for everyone, both in office and out office, because there are different kind of sexual harassment and discrimination that could happen in office, and there are some that could also happen on field. There are some that could also happen on field, and there are different ways that we can actually tackle this. Let me give another example. I gave an example when I first spoke, but let me give another example that really happens to people on the field, especially in mini-grid sites. There was a particular mini-grid that we did in my organization, and personally, this actually happened to me. I went to the mini-grid site, and I was in my trousers, and this community said, oh, though this is not the violence, but it is still like this, it was a discrimination. It was a discrimination. And the community said, oh, because you're a female, you are wearing a trouser, you cannot enter our community. But this is community. I'm saying this because we are on REA, Rural Electrification Agency platform, and we go to rural communities a lot. But this community, they already have their rules. So how do we undo such? We can't go there and change their mind immediately. Yes, we can start engaging them gradually, but it can't be an immediate act. And in that situation, I had to oblige. They gave me wrapper and I tied the wrapper, because when we are talking about how to undo JBVs, discriminations, harassment, we must also be able to understand how to blend in with the communities. These communities, yes, we are going there to enable them to bring energy solutions to them, but they have their rules. While some of the rules, we may not really, we may not agree with those rules, but there are rules that if we want to bring energy access to the last miles, we must try to see how to mitigate, and then from mitigation we can, or how to adapt, not mitigate, how to adapt in that situation, and then from there, when we are part of that community, we can start to change their orientation. We can start doing trainings with them, community awareness, because as a female, you don't expect me to wear a skirt and be climbing rooftop. It is not safe. As a technical personnel, and I'm going to community to install mini grids or to install on their rooftops, I can't be active in a skirt, or I can't be active in a wrapper. But of course, at that particular time, I had to oblige and start a relationship with that community. So we must be able to see how we can adapt, train ourselves on how to adapt in such situations, have policies that and steps that we can follow in our organizations, and also train everybody in our organizations on how to handle different situations depending on different scenarios.
Thank you
so much, Susan.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate your contribution to this. So, you mentioned something that, sounded really interesting to me, and that's about you going into the community and then the community people telling you, oh, you're wearing trousers, you're not allowed to go into the community. Now, this actually was one of the challenges a lot of people faced during the community engagement activities that we carried out as REA 4 years ago. Now, I believe a lot in if you're in Rome, behave like the Romans, right? So if you're going into a community, you do your feasibility, you do your needs assessment. As you're going into a community, you're also looking out for their norms, values, beliefs, right? And then if for any reason you're going into a community and you're going in there not complying with the values or norms or beliefs of that particular community, I believe it's something you should say firsthand, right? So present it firsthand to the community to say, people will be coming into your community. We have women who will be coming here as well. And because of A, B, C, D activities that they have to carry out, they may not be able to wear the normal wrapper or hijab or, you know, all these other things. You can wear a hat or a cap to cover your hair. But I feel like I don't think there's anything you can't achieve without proper conversation. Did you get what I mean? So if people are properly sensitized to understand why you have to be a certain way to achieve a certain goal, I feel like it's something that we can all achieve as a people. And that is something that a lot of developers need to actually imbibe. So we go into a community, first go in there and survey the ground, see what's happening. And that's why I'd like to bring in Mr. Ayo at this point. Thank you so much, Ms. Damilola. So I will bring in Mr. Ayo, who is the president of an association of of developers. So you know everything that's going on in this space. So I'm just wondering, as Rayan, is there a policy guideline or a policy directive that you're trying to, your EXCO, I want to call it an EXCO at this point, that your EXCO is trying to put in place or your body is trying to put in place to ensure that the association is speaking one language when they go out there in terms of GBV prevention? Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the patience. Yes, just as my VP had said at REA, we're big on GBV protection and prevention. And yes, we're putting together some form of policies. I want to say thank you to REA for some of the capacity building program that you've done for many of our members over time, over the years. It's been helpful to forming the pillars of those policies that we're trying to put together right now. And we hopefully believe in that we have to take this awareness further, just as you said. It's not just enough for us to have the capacity building programs on it. We have to periodically begin to remind ourselves, and we have to update those policies year on year, because what we found out is that GBV is beginning to take different forms and shapes over time. So we find out that if we don't keep updating the kind of policies we have on GBVs, the new ones will not be able to capture it. You know, new form of GBVs that I've found as being on social media. Because the truth about it is that there are ways that you can use social media to harass, you know, to oppress and to suppress. And there are some kinds of artworks or designs that you could do on social media that could potentially be some form of GBV. So I believe that we need to be updating our GBV policies and outlooks to get in tune with things that are happening right now and to be current at all times. You know, one of the soft-spoken part of the GBV prevention, and I would say that activity towards preventing it that we have been doing, stemming from the REA, has been from the community engagement side, like you said. You know, there are cultural silent GBV behaviors and, you know, stuffs like when we're gathering people for community engagement for any projects in the rural areas, you find it difficult getting the women to be there. And, you know, the men there do not know that they're silently kind of like that. This is an act of GBV, and they're silently harassing these women. So I want to say thank you again to REA for emphasizing some of those, you know, highlights. And I want to let you know that whether you observe it or not, we're beginning to change the world. We're beginning to change the norms, because by the time we're saying that, oh, sorry, we will not be able to go forward, progress with this project in your community unless we have the women sitting. I've been at different community engagement sitting that we had to wait. I had to tell them to go and call the women. Then after they called women, I said, okay, we need a number of youths, you know? And so all this is changing the shapes and the mindset of the people. I want to say kudos to organizations like AFDAM, you know, and some other organizations who are beaming serious light on female participation in the place of work, because empowerment and, you know, liberation of the minds of the women and girls does a lot towards, you know, having them ability to be able to speak up against gender-based violence. There are some of the females or women that are receptive in their behavior about it, only because they do not have the knowledge on how to, you know, prevent and how to resist it. So, and I see that the works that those female-led organizations, female-led academies who are doing trainings and institutions, you know, all this, what they are doing to the girls in empowering their mind, in empowering their entrepreneurial skills, like Solar Sisters and the rest are doing, is going a long way to reshaping their mindset. I see that we're moving forward, but I see that, yes, we need to put a lot of more effort into, you know, sensitizing on salient ways that GBVs could happen. Not like the billboards one, you know, there are the big boards one, oh, he's smacking on the bottom, he's doing all this. Many of the GBV seems not to be happening like that anymore. You know, you can be having a management meeting and some guy just shuts down a lady and says, hey, I'm talking here, you know, and it's a form of GBV. And, you know, like you said, we need to also educate our operators, installers, our technicians and engineers that, look, when you go into those rural communities, we're not sending you there to go and impregnate them, you know. So there are so many things that we need to do on the levels of developers and others to push the GBVs. I see that we're working on it, but I'm saying that we need to give more voice to it. We need to create more activities about it. We need to have more periodic interventions and capacity building programs, you know, from the agency. The agency needs to set aside some form of budget to ensure that this is done, you know, from time to time. The truth, like I said, is these things need to be updated. Every time human beings they evolve, and they evolve with new ideas on how to carry out GBVs. You know, so we also must be evolving in GBV prevention schemes and structural harm policies. So I'll stop there for now, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayo, for your very insightful contribution. So this is why we have you as one of our panelists, because we know you have a world of experience out there, both local and international experience, you know, in mini-grid development. So we're very, very grateful for your contribution and your experience. So let's just take it, since we're talking policy direction, I'd like to come back home to REA and just speak to Barrister Sally for a bit. I'm just curious to know, do we have any policy direction, policy framework within the REA, or have we had policy conversations, you know, around having a working document, you know, towards the prevention, response of gender-based violence, you know, in the workspace and by extension, project development? Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, as I said earlier, so far, the only thing we have right now, I said, was prepared in 2019. I guess would say it's a subject, it's due for review. So we should be talking about reviewing the gender mainstream document that was already, that is in place, at least to capture, just as the REAN president or chairman said, to the latest type of GBV, the ones in relation to that's cyberbullying or cyber social media GBV and all of that. So there's actually need for us to review the document. So as I said earlier on, we have the gender mainstream document. That is a functional document right now. It has been in operation since 2019 in the agency. And the document actually encourages or approved the 30% representation, female representation, and inclusion in project implementation, project management, basically. As I said, NEP, they have the gender specialist, social specialist on gender matters. And basically that is what, then you have the code of conduct, as I said, is a code of conduct document that recently NEP so far has been using. And it is where you find out that the NEP employees, you have the service providers, contractors, sign documents to prevent, just as a way of preventing any form of sexual exploitation, harassment, and any form of GBV. So basically, that's what the agency had. And then further to what the president said, I think it's a point we just need to look at, the aspect of budget. So I think henceforth, there should be proposals from us as an organization when the budget for the agency is being prepared, to have a budget line item where you have issues relating to gender-based violence, so that from the funds allocated for that purpose, the agency can now engage in serious advocacy, training, sensitizations, capacity buildings, and all of that for the staff, and then doing it in collaboration with various partners, contractors, developers, the public at large, in fact, community engagement too. So I think it's a point I just realized that it is high time the agency has a clause in the budget for such, not that we have to look for an omnibus budgetary allocation that we can tap from. So we should now henceforth now try as much as possible to get it inculcated into the budget, where you have a big line item that can take care of the gender-based violence in the agency.
Thank you so much, Barrister, for your contribution. I'm smiling because I like it when we're having a direction, you know, from a conversation. So I like the aspect of you now thinking in terms of having budgetary allocation to this specific issue. So we don't have to start, you know, scraping or looking for crumbs just to fund activities around gender-based violence. Thank you so much for your contribution towards that. So I would just like to, my last question really would go to Solar Sisters. So you deal with communities a lot, and I know you do economic empowerment in these communities. Now, I just want to, I just need you to run us through some of the measures you have put in place as you go into these communities, just in case you have issues around not necessarily gender-based violence in the way we're thinking about it, so maybe not sexual harassment, but have you had cases where the husbands are now feeling left out, you know, of the conversation, because a lot of times you go in there and you're just dealing with the women alone. So have you had issues where the men, you know, feel a bit left out, and because of that, so my wife is now having a lot of money, she doesn't listen to me anymore, and you know that of course leads to sometimes divorce, you know, in these local communities, or just a misunderstanding where at the end of the day the woman may just have to call you guys and say, we're not doing it again because it's actually, you know, interfering with the dynamics of my home. Have you ever had issues like that?
So thank you very much, Susan. So we've had issues, you know, from our entry into communities when we engage, because typically what happens is when we go into communities, the first thing we do is stakeholder engagement, and typically you meet the men who are at the king's palace or at the chief's palace, mostly the men and his chiefs, the head chief or the king and his chiefs. And then, you know, you introduce yourself, tell them about the solar star opportunity, tell them about climate change and, you know, how climate action and how they can contribute to it, and let them know the opportunity that is existing in energy poverty. And then the first thing we hear from the men is, oh, for this opportunity, why should I not be the one to take the opportunity? And then in some cases, we're asking them, but this opportunity we've brought it for your wives, for your sisters, for mothers in the community, and they go, no, they want the opportunity for themselves. So it takes us standing our ground. It takes us helping them understand the gains of women economic empowerment. It takes us helping them, first of all, get that buy-in and understand, trying to have a behavioral or a mindset shift from the norm or their belief system that only the men should be engaged in any income generating activity. Whenever something good comes to the community, it should go to the men. So it takes us standing our ground and understanding their context, and then just trying to educate them and sensitize them. And it has always worked, right? Because what we have is, okay, some accept it grudgingly, but it's always worked because they are better informed, and then they allow us access to their women. Now, as women go into doing their business and growing their businesses, the dynamics at the home front begins to change, and more in the positive light, because you see women who are now able to contribute, and they are grateful for the opportunity that their husbands, now these are some stories that women entrepreneurs share. My husband is no longer looking down on me. My voice now counts. My children are now watching me do business. My daughter is now telling me, Mommy, me too, when I finish school, I would like to be a business person. I would like to progress in academics. We see our women entrepreneurs who are able to fund their children's education down to the university level. We see women entrepreneurs who, because of the income they generate from their clean energy business, are themselves applying to go into formal education. So the dynamics change more for the positive than for the negative. We see men who also join their wives to become clean energy entrepreneurs, because some of our entrepreneurs, in sharing their stories, say, oh, my husband lost his means of livelihood 4 years ago during the COVID, when there was a conflict, when there was a flood, and since then life has been terrible. But now I'm doing my business. At first, my husband queried me and asking me, why are you doing this? But later on, he sees that I'm bringing money. He's interested. He joins us. And now there are two of them doing their business, means more income for the women. We've had some peculiar cases where the men tell, heads of households tell the women that I will only allow you go for a sisterhood meeting. Now, a sisterhood meeting for us in Solar Sister is the cluster group where we train and mentor women entrepreneurs every month. So you see cases where some women just come for these sisterhood meetings. They are not yet Solar Sister entrepreneurs. They are not yet doing their business, but their husband only allows them to just come for the Solar Sister trainings. And from then, they are able to understand and see that other women who are engaging in this business are not becoming hostile to their households. So their men, of course, they are in communities and they discuss. So their men are discussing with other men, and they are realizing that, no, my wife is engaged in this income generating activity. Things are better for us, and she's not becoming another person. So that fear is reduced. And so we also have that men-to-men support, because they're able to model each other, and they're able to see the benefits of another household who has allowed their mother and their wife to gain access to the Solar Sister opportunity in that community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chioma, for your contribution and for the great work you're doing in the communities as well. So, David, what are your thoughts around these conversations we've been having so far, and what further questions do you have for our panelists?
It's been interesting. Our time is far spent, and it's great to hear these different perspectives on GBV. But I think a particularly striking one for me was the experience that Ashdam had in that particular community. I mean, for example, I have a comment here from Tosin Olorunshola, who says it is worth striking a balance between cultural competence and the maintenance of ethics, because gender-based matters also go hand in hand with ethics. I think what I would like to add to this balance that Tosin is talking about is also the issue of inclusion. you know, and the place of women within the clean energy ecosystem. You know, if, for example, you know, an institution like REA is advocating for, you know, a fine balance between female and male professionals within the ecosystem, and you're a lady who have to actually work, do installations, you know, carry out very rigorous technical activities, but you can only do that in trousers, not any other attire. I think there's a need to, there's a need for behavioral change, but most importantly, there's a need to mainstream the fact that this space, this ecosystem is not a men-only ecosystem. You know, we have a lot of female. In fact, the number of female engineers keeps increasing on a daily basis now. Partly because of the REA's gender mainstreaming efforts, especially this STEM program, as well as other stakeholders like Solar Sisters initiatives. You know, so it means that in the next 5 to 10 years, you almost have a balance, if not have a balance, between the number of female professionals within the clean energy ecosystem and male professionals. I think that's one thing we need to be conscious of, that beyond fashion, these women actually need to do their work. You know, it's a job, you know, for them. But how do we do that? By continuous sensitization of these communities, because they don't really know better. You know, they are speaking based on their cultural history as well. So you can't really blame them. But with proper sensitization and proper community engagement, I believe that perception will continue to change, so that for women who go to the field all the time, they won't face this sort of harassment. I don't have any other questions for any of the panelists, but I have comments from the attendees. And I think one or two people will also want to ask questions. Okay, so Wellington Oluwatosi says, I have some questions. Is there a dedicated budget for implementing GBV prevention and response programs in Nigeria, right? I think Barrister already spoke on that earlier, and on you know, the plan to tackle that. Then let's see, how are funds allocated for training, monitoring, and supporting victims of GBV within the organization? Let me see another one that needs a direct response here. Okay, this particular one is asking for the barrister's slides. Well, I'll have to ask Barrister if she's willing to share that. If it's for public consumption, I'll email it to you. I can see your email here already. Then I have a few people with their hands up. Let's see if we can take one or two before we close. Okay, there's Janet Adekunle, there's Mohammed Garba, there's Josephine Ilesomi. So here, there's a rule, right? You just come up and ask your question or share your feedback in 1 minute, and it has to be related to this conversation. So I think we'll go with, we'll start with Janet. We'll start with Janet. Janet Adekunle, I don't know if you're there, but can you unmute yourself? Janet, can you hear us? Janet Adekunle, Mohammed Garba, Josephine Ilesomi. Who wants to go first? I don't know if, I'm not sure they're there. I think you've been given access to unmute yourself. Let me know if you're having any.
Hello,
you can message
good morning. Can you hear me, please?
Okay, great. Okay, Josephine, you're going first.
Yes,
Go ahead,
yes.
please.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. This is really interesting. I'm a PhD student at Durban University of Technology. My PhD is actually on advancing and eco-entrepreneurship in Nigeria. So this is very interesting, talking about solar systems and advancing renewable energy. So my question is on integrating multi-actors, like multi-perspective, because when you talk about gender-based violence and you talk about how to stop that or prevent that, I'm looking at also like the psychological part of it, the financial part of it, and all that. So my question is in what way are these organizations, Solar Sisters, REA, how are you integrating other support systems, psychologists, for example, to talk to women or the men, or medical team, or so that's basically my question. Thank you.
That's for Solar Sisters, right?
Yes.
Chioma, do you want to take that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Josephine. So one of the ways we integrate is first training of our field staff, all the staff who interact and engage with the communities are trained on creating safe places, on providing mentorship, training, and support in the communities that they work in. And we have, and they are female staff, they speak in the language and the dialect of the women entrepreneurs that we work with. And so they're able to provide first aid support and then enabling that access, between Solar Sister and partnering with other NGOs who are directly, who are directly engaging on gender-based violence issue, so that when we have peculiar cases, cases beyond our jurisdiction or beyond, our frame of work,
Oh, I think we lost Chema there.
Oh.
Or is it just...
Chioma, are you back?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly, please. You can run.
Okay,
Yes.
so I said our first line of action is training and building the capacity of our community workers, right? Building their capacity to provide the right mentoring and support, and stepping down trainings to women in terms of agency trainings, leadership trainings, social norms trainings, that can help them become better leaders and have upper voices in communities, help them become advocates in their communities. So providing that training for them, and then building and cultivating partnerships with organizations who are focused, who have gender-based prevention as thematic areas, so that when we work in communities and we meet cases that is beyond our scope in terms of women economic empowerment, that have to be focused, maybe a legal support needs to be provided. And then because we're able to build and cultivate partnerships outside Solar Sister with organizations whose thematic focus is on these areas, then we can escalate to such partnerships. But we'll provide that first aid, frontline support by ensuring that the staff who engage directly with the communities are trained to provide the right support and agency for the communities and for the women.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chioma, for that very explicit feedback. I can see Eris JOAB. Eris, can you unmute yourself and go ahead?
Okay, thank you very much. Can I be heard now?
Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed the session and the conversation. What I really want to know is how I can get involved with the Solar Sisters. I'm from Delta State.
Okay, Aries, we'll take it from here after the conversation.
All right.
I can, if you're from Delta State, great. We have women entrepreneurs in Delta State, so it'd be great to have you join our network. So we'll take it out from here and then discuss afterwards.
All right. Thank you.
Aries, can you share your email and your phone number on the chat box? I'll see it and then I'll share it with Choma, if that's fine by you. More hands up, but let's see if we can take 2 more people before we close. Okay, I think Janet Adekunle is back here. Janet, can you unmute yourself and go ahead? Hi, Janet, can you hear us? If you can hear us, you can unmute yourself and go ahead. And Janet is not there. Mohammed Garba, can you unmute yourself and go ahead? Can you hear us?
All right. Hello, good morning, all.
Good morning.
Yeah, are you hear me?
Loud and clear, please. You can go ahead.
Hello? All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
I want to appreciate you all for this wonderful and insightful discourse. It's indeed inspiring. And I am from the Niger State Border Development Agency, the Virgin business plan for this their project, the renewable energy system. And I'm very happy that the issue has been discussed, because that area where we are proposing to have expanded electricity project is a very remote area where they have not even seen more of these civilized people coming around them. Now that you are taking that into conversation, I become very happy, because I know the people around that area are becoming protected and more protected. For the solar system, I became very, very happy, and to tell you that I, as the Director General and the CEO of that agency, will surely kickstart a formation of a unit to handle that aspect via the use of, I'll borrow your own your brand name, where I will rather call my own the Border Sisters. Thank you very much for that. But to crown it off, I don't know, this sensitization and mobilization to create awareness there, as people have been referred to as people have been mentioning about the budget, who bears the responsibility. We don't know if there could be any support, either by way of training or fund for that purpose. But we would like to, in fact, I am really in tune with that concept of the solar systems, because with women, you are everywhere. Sincerely, we quite appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Garba, for your feedback, and thanks for joining us. Susan, if you don't have any other thoughts or questions, I think this is a good time to close on this. But before I hand over to you, Susan, I just want to assure all attendees who registered for this webinar that the recording will be shared, especially for people who couldn't join in at all, or attendees who had to drop off at some point for one reason or the other. But at its peak, we had 96 attendees on this webinar. But for the over 100 and something plus who couldn't join us, we have your emails, and we'll be sharing the recording with you this week, so that you can have a go at it. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you to our esteemed panelists, excuse me. Thanks to our esteemed panelists and the attendees. This wouldn't be what it is without your participation. We see your questions. We'll be very happy if you can just put your email address to your questions, so that we can just respond to your questions and then send it to you directly, if you don't mind, please. Or you can put phone number, email, whichever one is convenient for you. We'll be very happy to do that. Just a little point before we close out. So with regards to the PhD students who spoke about psychosocial support, legal support. So what we have actually done with the Nigeria Electrification project is to, as part of our GBV prevention and response framework, we were able to map out GBV service providers across the 6 geopolitical zones. So what we do basically is we integrate this mapping system into our document. We just finished that mapping process. So moving forward, as we start to roll out our new programs, this mapping document will be part of the program as part of your GBV GRM. So your grievance redress mechanism, just the pathway for you to resolve your GBV issues, just in case it happens. And then the framework, we're going to integrate some clauses into documents. Hopefully that scales through. Just for you to know how you can prevent GBV in your workplaces. The code of conduct is a compulsory document for everyone. I see somebody still asking questions about specifically the REA and the Nigeria Electrification project. So yes, we have a policy document, a policy clause, and that clause is in the code of conduct document and prevention against child labor. So your labor management and then your code of conduct. So we'll just leave it there for now. And then with your emails and your phone numbers, we can just continue the conversation from where we have left off. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to the REA anytime, any day. Nigeria Electrification Project will be happy to answer all your questions. So thank you all so much for taking the time to join the conversation. This is an ongoing conversation, and hopefully this will, a lot of these conversations, the idea or the end point is for it to translate into a policy document that we can all work with and see that it's actually working and making the necessary impact that we're actually hoping it would make at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Solar Sisters. Thank you so much, Barrister Amina. Thank you very much, Ashdam, for your wonderful contributions. Mr. Ayo, your experience in this field cannot be overemphasized. Your contribution to the growth of this of your association and by extension the renewable energy space is not taken for granted. And thank you so much for answering the call, even at short notice. I'll keep saying thank you so much. And everyone, that's it for me. So just have fun for the rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much, everyone. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you.